Well, good morning. I hope you're enjoying the morning so far at Kairos. I don't know about you, but I love the festivities, and that opening song was awesome. It's got me excited for the rest of the day. Hey, before I get into week 5 of our series, Wayfinding, I wanted to just quickly remind you, we got something pretty big coming up next week. It's Christmas at Kairos. We have 3 services happening. Yeah. And we're so excited about these services. We've been working so hard. Our teams have been working so hard to prepare for that. And so a couple quick things that I want to ask of you. If you are able and you're not already, I would encourage you to find a place to serve on that Sunday. There are 3 different times, lots of places, lots of opportunities, whether it be inside, but also we have needs when we do the outside activities as well. There is a volunteer sign-up sheet next to the doors out there as you make your way out. The other thing I want to encourage you to do is being inviting. We have multiple ways in which you can invite people. We have the invite cards in your seats. If you want to grab some more, there's some on the table out there as well. And then also we have the yard signs. Feel free to take 2 or 3 of those, put them in your yard and throughout the community. We just want to get the word out. And then, of course, you can also go online and share the event on Facebook. That would be a huge help. And so we want to be good stewards of all that we're doing. And part of that is making sure that we get the word out about what we're doing so that we can get people in the door to hear about Jesus Christ. And it's going to be a powerful, powerful Sunday next Sunday. All right, can we do that? Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to dive into part 5 of this thing. As we've been going through this series, like I said, we've been talking about Paul's life. We spent a lot of time in the beginning kind of looking at Paul's conversion and looking at the relationships that were so helpful to that, and just grace and relationships of grace and the conversations that happened in the conversion. I want to switch it up a little bit. Now we're going to jump almost all the way to the end, really the end of Acts, not the end of Paul's story, but the end of Acts. We're going to be in Acts 27 and 28. And one of the things here is we see in the very beginning of Paul's conversion, Jesus says something to Ananias about Paul's suffering. It's in Acts 9. Verse 15, it says, "Go, for this man is my chosen instrument to take my name to Gentiles, kings, and the Israelites." And in verse 16, it says, "I will show him how much he must suffer for my name." And so there's this before he even is converted, there's this promise of suffering to Paul. And then in Acts 14, Paul then reminds the disciples or the church that it is necessary to pass through troubles on our way into the kingdom of God. And so we have this theme. Paul knew about it in the beginning. He's experienced it up until this point and continued to experience it. And he takes those experiences and he reminds people like God is working in and through these trials and troubles. Now, what I want to focus on today in Acts 27 and 28, I want to look at how Paul experiences some of that suffering. He's already experienced so much, but he experiences some more. And it all kind of happens in a short period of time as we read it. It took a long time, but it all happens back to back to back. And there's the storm, there's a shipwreck, and there's a snake bite. So I want to give you a quick summary overview. I don't want to read almost 2 full chapters to you guys today. We're going to come back to them, but I want to give you a summary of what took place between Acts 27 and 28. It says, as Paul and the others sailed towards Rome, they encounter a severe storm described as the northeaster. The ship is caught in the tempest, unable to head into the wind. Despite efforts to control it, they drift for many days without seeing the sun or stars. Hope dwindles as the crew jettisons and gets rid of the cargo and gear to survive the battering storm. Paul, who had warned against the journey, reassures the crew with a message from God, promising that although the ship will be lost, no lives will be taken. After 14 nights adrift, they approach land, eventually being shipwrecked near the island of Malta. After everyone arrives safely on shore, a snake bites Paul. Instead of panicking, he calmly shakes it off, and the locals expect him to swell up and die. When he remains unharmed, the perception of him shifts positively, and Paul continues to demonstrate faith, healing the sick among the islanders. His steadfastness in the face of adversity serves as a powerful example of trust in God's providence, even in the midst of storms, shipwrecks, and snake bites. Now, I'm going to be saying that a lot today. I'm going to be talking about that a lot today and how it correlates to us. And so as I'm going to be saying that, I want to kind of define those terms for you so that you can get what I'm talking about as I say them. So storms, shipwrecks, and snake bites. It'll be up on the screen. Storms, unexpected circumstances that cause delay in where we're going and how we want to go and stuff like that. It's just things that come along that we weren't ready for, weren't prepared for, but they happen, and they happen to all of us. Those are the storms, unexpected circumstances causing delay. Shipwrecks, course-altering problems that take us an unexpected way, that lead us to an unexpected journey. And then there's the snake bites. It's these negative attacks, whether internally or externally, that attempt to discourage us, discredit us, or destroy us along the way. So we got unexpected circumstances, the storms. We got shipwrecked expectations, and really snake bites of negativity. So those are going to be the three things that I really focus on today throughout our story and throughout our time. Now, the first thing that we're going to dive into is the storm of circumstances. Now, this comes first, and it's going to be in Acts. We're going to look at verses 14 and then 18 through 22. The storm is kind of what led to all of this, and so I'm just kind of looking at a few little things here that will kind of help us in the storm. Verse 14 says, "A fierce wind called the northeaster rushed down from the island. Since the ship was caught, it was unable to head into the wind. We gave way to it and were driven along." And this is what storms tend to do in our lives. They tend to come along and kind of take control. And sometimes we fight, and sometimes we kind of just let it happen, and we find ourselves drifting. In verse 18, it says, "Because we were being severely battered by the storm, the crew began to jettison the cargo the next day. On the third day, they threw the ship's gear overboard with their own hands." So they're trying to make sure they can stay afloat. They're getting rid of things, throwing things off the boat. For many days, neither sun nor stars appeared. The severe storm kept raging. Finally, all hope that we would be saved was disappearing, since many were going without food. Paul stood up among them and said, "You men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss. Now I urge you, take courage, because there will be no loss of any lives, but only the ship." Now, this is what storms do. They disrupt, they distract, they disturb, right? They leave us sometimes feeling helpless and hopeless, kind of just drifting and wondering when will this storm end. And one of the things that stood out to me, well, first and foremost, is the word jettison. I don't hear that word often. I'm like, cool, jettison, that's a fun word. And then so it says they jettisoned the cargo, and then they began to throw things overboard. And so they're removing cargo, they're removing gear, and what are they doing? They're releasing extra weight and extra burden in order to weather the storm. I think oftentimes in the storms that we go through, the storms of circumstance, God may want to show us some things that we need to remove in order to continue forward in his direction. And so sometimes those storms show up, and they reveal things that are weighing you down or keeping you from moving forward. You know, the burdens that weigh us down, things we're holding on to that we no longer need to hold on to. Maybe it's baggage from the past, and that baggage that we aren't willing to let go of continues to lead us into storm and storm and storm and storm because we're not willing to let go of it or throw it overboard and be done with it. Or maybe we just have this constant feeling of drifting. We just, because of what's taking place, we're just kind of caught in the middle of it. We don't know where we're going. We don't have direction, and we're not sure what to do. And all the things around us are weighing us down, and everything keeps piling on. And if we don't learn to really remove the old stuff and step into the new stuff, we will end up sinking with the ship. Some of us are sinking with the ship because we're not willing to let go of the past. Maybe it's regrets, maybe it's mistakes, maybe it's bitterness, whatever it is. Something happened, and it has continued to weigh you down and almost put you in danger of sinking with the ship. But we don't have to live through that. And just this small little thing, we see this storm take place, and we see them throwing things over to try to stay afloat. And then there's this encouragement that comes through that, hey, the ship may be lost, the cargo may be lost, but your lives will be okay. And I think that's such a great promise for us. Like, we'll go through these things, but God is still good. And I think it's so important, man, to know that we will always face storms of circumstance. And if we don't deal with them, they'll continue to pile up, and we'll end up sinking. So we have to deal with them. Now, this is something that I came to realize. Often our storms of circumstance cause or lead us to shipwrecked expectations. because we still have that thing. We're still holding on to that thing. We won't let go. We have our pride, and so it leads to shipwrecked expectations. And this is the next thing we see that takes place in the story. Acts 27, verse 39, shipwrecked expectations. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but sighted a bay with a beach. They planned to run the ship ashore if they could. After casting off the anchors, they left them in the sea, at the same time loosening the ropes that held the rudders. Then they hoisted the foresail to the wind and headed for the beach. When they struck a sandbar and ran the ship aground, the bow jammed fast and remained immovable. The bow jammed fast and remained immovable, while the stern began to break up by the pounding of waves. And so the storm is still raging. They've tossed everything over, and now they're stuck, and the waves are just pummeling them, breaking apart the ship. And at this point, they began to realize we're kind of close. We might be able to make it all the way to that land. And they have prisoners on board. So it goes on, verse 42, the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners so that no one would swim away and escape. But the centurion kept them from carrying out their plan because he wanted to save Paul. So he ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest were to follow, some on planks and some on debris from the ship. In this way, everyone safely reached the shore. So they weathered the storm. They survived a shipwreck. But this wasn't the plan. This isn't where they wanted to go. This isn't how they wanted to get there. This isn't what they expected to take place or where they expected their journey to lead. But though they lost the cargo and though they lost the ship, they were all safe because God was still working and moving in the midst of them. I mean, just right there in the middle of it, you see that many of the prisoners were saved just because Paul was with them. And just because Paul was encouraging them and telling them, hey, we're going to be okay. And they believed in that and they had hope in that. And there's more that comes from this story. They weren't expecting to go this way, but God was doing something in the midst of it. And we'll look at that in a few minutes. But here's what I want to do. As we think about expectations, we're nearing the end of 2023, which is crazy, right? Like, where did the year go? How are we almost to Christmas? Go all the way back to the beginning of the year. What plans did you have? We look at the oncoming year and we say, well, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to accomplish, and this is what I want to see. What did you expect to happen in your relationships, in your job, with your finances? Where did you expect to be by the end of the year? I'm really thinking about it. Is what you thought was going to happen? Did it happen? Is what you expected to happen? Or were in the midst of it, in that time, did you experience some storms of circumstance that caused delay? Or did you have a shipwreck causing your expectations to be kind of just dashed upon the waves? Often what we expected to happen and how we expected to happen, it doesn't always go that way. And that's hard to deal with, isn't it? When your expectations are kind of just ruined, kind of dashed, and you look and you go, well, there goes that. I thought this is where God was leading me. I thought this is what God wanted me to do. I thought this is where we were going in this relationship. And then all of a sudden, it's gone. And in those moments, we feel defeated. Or we feel like a failure. We feel discouraged. We let other people down. Maybe your expectations have been shipwrecked. I was thinking about this, and there are many different things as I look through the year and I look to now and I go, wow, I never expected some of the things that took place. But I remember at the beginning of the year, we were as a church, experiencing great growth, and I was looking to make some changes with staff and really begin to bring us together more and work together more and, just see the responsibilities go up and see the ministry strengthen and grow because of it. And so we started making these changes, and in the beginning of the year, there was this, I'm going to call them storms of circumstances. And for me, it led to an unexpected shipwreck, and I'm going to call it on the island of youth ministry. Now, let me be very clear. It's not in a bad way, not at all. But just with keeping with the focus of the message, I want to say is that I was shipwrecked on the island of youth ministry, and I've loved it. I've loved just the experiences that I've gotten the last 6 months. I love the relationships that I've built. It's been amazing that just to be able to spend time with your teenagers. It's been amazing to be able to just get some more time with some of the volunteers and the leaders. It's been amazing to see spiritual growth take place, not only in the teens, but also in the adults, and just see some spiritual growth happen, but also the miracle growth happen. And so while it was unexpected to me, it wasn't unexpected to God. And I think that's always something we got to make sure of, right? I think what's really cool about it is something that, like, I have such a heart and a passion for youth ministry, and like this little shipwreck on the island of youth ministry has reminded me of where it all began, of where God first led me, and the passion and desire that led me to here. And that wasn't expected either. And it's amazing what God can do. I love doing youth on Wednesdays, but it wasn't what I expected to be doing this year. There were things I was hoping to see get done. There were things I was hoping to focus a little bit more on, be a little bit more intentional in, to accomplish, but they've been delayed. In some cases, they've been changed completely. Now, what I will say is I am looking to kind of cast off from this amazing island of youth ministry in the beginning of 2024 as we hopefully bring on a new youth leader. So I would encourage you, I asked you a few weeks ago, pray for that. We have a candidate that we are looking to move forward with. There's just a few more things, and so hopefully by January, we will have a new youth pastor to step into this role. And it's an amazing thing. And I believe as they come in and I depart the ministry, it will be better because of it. Because of the time that I got in it, and because there was time allowed to bring that person into the role exactly when God needed them there. And I also think there's more taking place and what God is doing and what God is orchestrating. Things I can't see. There will be unexpected things, but I think that ministry is going to be stronger and our church as a whole is going to be stronger. But none of it were things that I expected. Has it been tough? Oh yeah, you betcha. Has it been tiring? Absolutely. Have I been blessed because of it? Yeah, I have. Have I grown because of it? Yes, I have. Have I learned to rely more on other people? Absolutely, because I've had to. And so God showed me some amazing things. And so here's the deal. I just wanted to share that story because it's something that it really resonates with me on that level, and I hope it does with you as well. But the storms of circumstance that we go through, they are tough. Having our expectations shipwrecked, and that's difficult to process. It's difficult to deal with. It's difficult to go through. But God is with us in the storms. And God is also working through our shipwrecks. He's always working and moving. So after surviving the storms of circumstance and coming to terms with shipwrecked expectations, here's what tends to take place. You go through a storm, you go through a shipwreck, and you kind of feel weak and vulnerable. You have some fatigue and you're feeling fragile and you think, okay, that was it, we're through it. But then something else takes place. And this is where the snake bites of negativity tend to come in. So I want to read what happens next. Acts 28, verse 1. It says, once ashore, we then learned that the island was called Malta. The local people showed us extraordinary kindness, for they lit a fire and took us all in, since it was raining and cold. As Paul gathered a bundle of brushwood and put it on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened itself to his hand. While the people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, this man is probably a murderer, and though he escaped the sea, justice will not allow him to live. I'm already casting judgment on who Paul is. However, I love this. He shook the creature off into the fire and suffered no harm. They expected that he would swell up and suddenly drop dead. And so we go through it, right? We go through storms, we go through shipwrecks, we're weak, we're vulnerable, we're trying to recuperate, and then what happens? The enemy comes in and he tries to strike. He says, right now, this is the moment where I can weaken them, I can take them down, I can defeat them. They may have survived the storm and the shipwreck, but they're not going to survive the negativity and the deception and the lies. I wonder if you've ever been there. You just went through something difficult, and along come the negative thoughts, your own, about what you went through, about how it was your fault. You have your negative thoughts. And then the enemy comes in and he begins to whisper lies. Where you're at is no good. You're no good. You're no good for the people around you. You're going to fail. You're going to keep failing. Look at what you just went through. That's your, all these lies come into place. And then As if it's not bad enough that you're dealing with your own internal struggle and the enemy's coming at you, then you get the judgment of others, right? They're watching from the outside, and they're casting these judgments on you, and you're like, really? Really, you're going to judge me and add negativity on top of what I just went through? Thank you very much for not helping, right? And it's hard when we go through this. The enemy loves to attack us when we're weak and vulnerable. Others tend to make assumptions about us based on what we went through, maybe recently, or what we've been through in the past, right? They'll trudge up the past against us. And others cast judgment without having all the details. I mean, in Paul's, they were like, well, that guy's probably a murderer. He got bit by a snake, right? Almost like you deserved what you got. You deserve what you went through. Casting judgments, they don't have the details. And I think others still, and it's horrible, but I bet you've experienced this. It's almost like they are just waiting for us to fail and fall. And when we go through it like that, they look and they point and they say, I told you so. It's hard. Now, while I think the external stuff is difficult to deal with, I think the bigger one is the internal, because we can't get away from ourselves, though we might want to. We can't get away from our own negativity towards ourselves. Right? We go through these things and we say, this was my fault. Sorry, I was jamming out. We say, this is my fault. What could I have done differently? How could I have reacted differently? Was I the cause of all of this? And then we say, well, I deserve what happened. I deserve what people are telling me and saying about me. I deserve it all. And I look at the scripture, and for me, it's like this simple thing in the story, but I think it holds a profound truth. The snake bites Paul, and he shakes it off. He shakes it off. And so I'll say this to you, when the snakes of negativity attack, we have to shake it off and move forward in the truth. We have to. And what's the truth that I'm talking about? Here's the truth. You ready? We've been talking about this whole series. The truth of who God is, of what God has done, and what God has promised to do. We talked about if we want to wayfind, that's it. Remembering who God is, remembering what God's done, remembering what God has promised to do. God promised Paul that he would make it to Rome, that he would preach in front of kings and governors. And though he was experiencing storms and shipwrecks and snake bites, he said, you know what? I'm holding on to what God said. Even if I get bit by a venomous, deadly snake, God told me I'm good. And there's so much faith in that. Faith in who God is, what God's done, and what he promises to do. And I think the other important thing, though the snakes will bite, we can't stop the snakes from biting, right? But we can't control how long we let the bite and the venom sink into our hearts and to our minds. So how long are you going to let it happen? How long are you going to let it linger? Are you going to continue to just let it happen, or are you going to shake it off? Because that venom of negativity, man, it is going to try to break our spirits. It's going to try to make our faith falter and cause our hope to hinder. And so we got to shake it off and say, you know what? I've been through it. I've gone through it. I've overcome it. You may come at me, but I'm believing in what God says about me and what he is saying that he will do through me as well. And we shake it off. We have to shake it off. And going back to Paul's story, there's so much that happens here. I would encourage you, go read through the whole thing. It's so neat just to see all the little things that are taking place. But, through the storm, the entire time, Paul's a prisoner at this moment. And he's trying to give advice, and he's encouraging people, and he's inspiring people. During the shipwreck, he was optimistic and he was positive. As the snake, sunk his teeth in, Paul didn't waver. Through it all, he held on to God's truth. And his faith led him to bring hope and healing to others in unexpected ways as he traveled and journeyed along to his final destination. I want to wrap up the story in Acts 28, verse 7 through 10. This is right after the snake bite. It says, now in the area around the place was an estate belonging to the leading man of the island named Publius, who welcomed us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. Publius' father was in bed suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went to him, and praying and laying his hands on him, he healed him. After this, the rest of those on the island who had diseases came and were cured. You look like this was not an expected thing. In order to get them to this island, they had to go through some very, very tough things. But in the midst of that unexpected shipwreck and all those storms of circumstances, God brings healing and hope to an island that never expected it. And I love the last line, verse 10. And it says, so they heaped many honors on us. And when we sailed, when we got back on course to where we were going, they gave us what we needed. And this is such a powerful truth because we may lose some things along the way. But if we stay faithful, if we stay hopeful, God will give us what we need to move forward in our journey. And so I think it's so important that we look to what God is doing in the storms, or look to what God can do through the storms. We look to see how God is leading and guiding us in an unexpected shipwreck. We reaffirm his truth in our lives so that we can just shake off the snake bites when they happen. Because we're going to do this. We're going to experience storms. We're going to experience expectations being shipwrecked. We're going to experience snake bites of negativity in our lives. And while it's happening, we may not see it while it's hard sometimes as you're going through these things to see what God is doing. But man, from Paul's story here, from my personal story, and I believe that God has a purpose or can repurpose the storms, the shipwrecks, and the snake bites that we endure. So think about a past or current storm of circumstance. Man, find God in the argument. Find God in the health issue. Find God in the financial stress. Find God in the relational tension. He's there. He's never left. Stay focused on him. Think about your past or current shipwrecked expectations. Man, look back, or maybe right now get a fresh perspective of what God is wanting to do. And these things come, man. Look at the shipwrecked expectations through job loss, through the end of a friendship, through relocation, through income decrease, through changes in your health that no longer allow you to do what you thought you would be doing. It's unexpected, but God is still working and moving. Think about the snake bites of negativity that you've endured. I think in those moments, God is revealing something. Maybe first and foremost about himself to you. He's trying to reveal the truth to you. He's trying to help you combat your own lies and your own negativity with his truth. But he may be trying to reveal something about a relationship in your life. One that's not good for you, that may be toxic, that may be negative, that needs to be jettisoned. For every lie spoken to you, whether from yourself, from others, or the enemy, God has a greater truth to speak over you. And that's what we got to hold on to. We get it from his word, and we get it from his spirit, and we get it from his people. And so in these storms and in these shipwrecks and in all the negativity, we gotta hold fast to his word and his truth and his promises, who he is, what he's done, what he promises to do. Because in every storm, God has something to teach us. In every shipwreck, God can work through us unexpectedly. In every snake bite, God wants to remind us of his truth, not only about us, but also about the others around us. The enemy will try to derail us and bring doubt to our destination, but we got to remember who God is. You think about Paul. I've already said it, but I just look and I say, what was he holding on to? How did he endure the storm? How did he go? It's because he held on to God. This is what God did in my life. This is the grace he showed me in my life. This is what God said would happen, and it's happened time and time again, and this is what God promised would happen in the future. And so I'm holding on to that. I'm holding on to the goodness of God. And that's really a wayfinding through our storms and our shipwrecks and our snake bites. It requires us to rely on God, to obediently follow God, and to continually remember his truth. And that's how we keep moving forward. And that's how we stay hopeful and how we stay faithful in the midst of these storms and shipwrecks and snake bites. We can't control what happens to us. We can't control what is said to us. but we can control how we respond and how we react. And we can choose, always, we can choose to rely on God, to believe God's truth, and to follow where God is leading. I'm going to ask that you guys would bow your heads, close your eyes, and just right now, let's take a moment to just be grateful. Remember the storm that God has already brought you through. Remember how you endured. Remember how he provided. Remember what he revealed to you in the midst of that storm of circumstance. He's good. If he did it before, he can do it again. Remember how he's done that. And I think as you think about your expectations being shipwrecked, and maybe you've already done it and you look back and you go, I wasn't expecting that to happen. I wasn't ready for that to happen, but I am so thankful that God orchestrated it the way that he did, because I'm better for it. My family's better for it. My relationships are better for it. My workplace is better for it. Sometimes it's hard. But if we remember what God did through those things, or if we look back and say, I fully believe this is what God was trying to show me and trying to teach me, and in the midst of it, not only did he bring healing and hope to me, but I believe he did the same for others. I think the other one is just remembering his truth. Remembering his promises. Remembering what his word says about you. Remember that he loves you unconditionally. He loves you so much, right? He loves you so much that he sent his son Jesus to take your place, to die for your sins. When that negativity comes, whether internally or externally, remember what God says about you and how much God loves you and that he has new life for you and purpose for you. No matter the storms, no matter the shipwreck, no matter the negativity that comes, stand on his truth. Now, we can look back and remember. But maybe right now we're going through it. You're dealing with that storm of circumstance and you're looking to God and you're going, why? Right? Maybe you've run through the same questions. What did I do? What should I have done differently? How did I cause this? Man, I think those questions need to change and say, God, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to show me? What do I need to remove? What baggage am I carrying? We may be at fault. There may be something that we're carrying at fault. Figure out what it is. See if there's some unnecessary things, some unnecessary burdens, some unnecessary weight, some unnecessary baggage that you need to let go of to get past this storm. Maybe recently your expectations were shipwrecked. And you had hoped and you had prayed and you had fought. You find yourself here today and you say, this is not where I expected to be. This is not how I expected to get here. And I think it's real easy to look and say, I failed. I couldn't do it. But I think that's the enemy lying to us. And I say, we look at it and we say, God, I believe that even in this unexpected shipwreck, you can move and work in mighty ways in me. God, help me see your plan. God, help me see what you're doing. God, help me see the people that you've put me around. Maybe for me to encourage and inspire and bring hope and healing, or maybe I need them in my life to do that right now. See God in the midst of it. Now, as to the snake bites of negativity, we've all been on the receiving end of them. And I think there have been times when we have also given them out. So I think today maybe for you it's time to stop believing the lies that you're telling yourself, that the enemy's whispering in your ear, or just the constant berating of the judgment of others. You need to shake those things off and say, you know what? I'm going to hold fast to God's word and to his truth and to his promises, who he says I am, what he's done in my life and what he promises to do. You know, through the storms, through the shipwrecks, through all of it, he's working. Don't lose sight of that. Hold fast to your faith. Hold fast to your hope. Use that to encourage and inspire your family and loved ones. Let them see that you have weathered the storm and you have endured the shipwrecks and that you have shaken off the snake bites, and let them see your strength and your courage and your faith and your hope, and let them know that it is all because of God. And lead them to him. God, I just thank you for your reminder today. We will go through these things. We live in a fallen, broken, sinful world. And so we have gone through storms and we will experience more. Our expectations have been shipwrecked before and they'll be shipwrecked again. There will be snakes. There will be negativity. But through it all, you are the constant. You are the foundation. You are what we hold on to. You are our anchor. So may we be reminded of that. Hold on to that. And continue to show people that we have you on our side through everything. It's in your Son's precious name that I pray. Amen.